honest, we don't have to. You don't want to do it, just yell back. Matt Staggs with Cividu.com. And
Joe Abercrombie.
Joe
Cividu.com. Here.
Hey, you got to let me introduce this. I'm here with Joe Abercrombie, and I appreciate you making time for me.
You should appreciate it. It's more than you deserve.
So, Eddie, look, we don't have to if you don't want to. I mean, it's.
I'm here now. Let's
Okay.
do it.
So you've got a new book out, and it's Half a King, and I understand that you're going a little bit of a different direction from your prior books.
Yeah.
So
Give me that. So the idea with this book was really to try something slightly different. I think I'm a little frustrated, you might say, with the big size of where epic fantasy is. It's very hard to find a quick, sharp, focused epic fantasy book. So the idea was really to write that kind of book, also perhaps for a younger audience, potentially, though very much something that the adult audience would still enjoy, something that has all the grit. Leave that there. I am finished. I'll let you know when I've finished. The grit and the vivid characters and the challenge and the darkness, the moral ambiguity, the crunching action, all those things that I've tried to bring to my adult work, also expressed in a quick, tight, sharp form. That was the idea. All yours.
Thanks. So when you're looking at a book that you want to cross over with both adults and young adult audiences, is there a line you have to walk between having the right kind of language and level of visceral excitement and... Can you talk? Yeah.
Well, No. My turn now. I think there is a line, I think, but in a way, policing that line is the editor's role. You know, for me, it's got to be the book that I want to write, and it's a slightly different tone from the outset. It's a new world. The world has a slightly, I suppose, more mythic quality than the other stuff. A bit less raw, a bit less modern in style. It's got a Viking feel to it. So the tone of voice is different, the language is slightly different. There's certainly not so much swearing in it. But ultimately, it's up to the editor to make sure it fits into the box they want to try and sell it in. And there has been no need to change anything. No need to change anything, really. Just one thing in the second book so far, a little paragraph that was taken out. Generally speaking, you can get away with a lot in a young adult book these days. And my feeling was always, young adults, they're adults. They're just young ones. And that means they want to read very much the same kind of stuff that old adults like me want to read.
Thanks. So, can you tell me a little bit about the plot, just in case our readers here haven't?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, the book's about Prince Yarvi. He's the younger son of a warlike king, but he's been born with a malformed left hand, which means he's unable to hold a shield, above all, or to draw a bow or pull an oar. Do any of the things that are expected of a man in this kind of Viking society. And so he's been hived off as a bit of an embarrassment, really, to train to be a minister, who's a kind of a keeper of knowledge, an advisor, a healer. Traditionally a woman's role, but a very important role. Unfortunately for Yarvi, he's happy to kind of leave the kingship behind, but his father and brother are horribly murdered, as does sometimes happen, and he's forced to become king himself and use his mental powers to overcome some more physical and direct enemies. Go on, take it if you want.
Is there a kind of historical quality to this that maybe you took something from? I know that there, and I may be wrong about this, but I understand that the Vikings had a presence in kind of where you're from, historically speaking.
Yeah, I mean, half of England was Viking at one time, the Danelaw, and I've always been very interested in the Vikings. I think all my books I've always been interested in bringing some, history into it. I read an awful lot of history. That's most of what I read, and I like the kind of authenticity and the kind of grain of truthfulness you get from something that has a historical feel. In a way, I've always been more interested in what fantasy has in common with everything else, the characters, the plotting, the writing, than necessarily those things that make it different. The magic, the fantastical elements. I like to keep those to a minimum. So I think, I was very influenced by a lot of historical fiction about Vikings, writers like Bernard Cornwell, like Robert Lowe, who write tough, strong stories with a very powerful tone of voice that give you a feel of that alien Viking mindset. I wanted to try and get a bit of that in there.
So, when we're looking at the Viking mindset, are there certain things that one would qualify as that? And I wanted to ask you about the appeal of low magic versus high magic in settings. You know, when you're looking at something like Tolkien versus something like, say, George R. R. Martin's stuff, which is kind of low magic, especially early in the series.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, different people have very different tastes on this. Some people, you know, regard it as not fantasy at all unless it has a lot of those, you know, fantastical things, a lot of magic in it. For me, my taste has always been for the magic to be very sparing. I often like books that have the big magic. I love Tolkien. But my taste as a writer was always, I like it when the magic is as strange and unknowable to the characters as it is to the reader. I like the magic to feel magical, to feel kind of rare, special, strange, frightening, terrifying. That's my taste. I mean, I suppose as well, I like the idea of a human world. I was always a bit put off by things like orcs, where characters can hack their way through armies of orcs and you don't have to worry because they're orcs. You know, in the real world, when we do terrible things, we inflict them on other humans, and there are costs and consequences to that. And that's what I'm interested in, a human world with relatively little magic. That's my taste.
So in your first series, the first Law books, there was kind of an orc analog. How did you work around that idea about the orcs to come up with something that's acceptable?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, it's nice to have some elements that are in there, as long as it's not the sort of focus and the main enemy isn't a kind of a totally externalized other. So there were Shankar in those books who are, as you say, kind of a little orc-like, perhaps. You know,
it might have not been fair to call them an orc analog.
Well, it's enough to avoid any copyright issues with New Line anyway, so that's good enough for my money. But they're not a central part of the book, and they're kept in a way to one side. And there is a lot more magic in the first Law than my later books, and sometimes I like that. There's got to be a bit of mixture, a bit of give and take.
Now I understand you're a father as well. So could you talk a little bit about what you were looking for as a parent with these books and what kind of things you think is important?
I can talk about that, yeah. I think it was interesting for me. I mean, part of the decision to write something for a younger crowd as well was, you know, motivated by seeing my own kids grow up. My eldest is 7 now. And the sort of huge excitement she has at starting to read things for herself and, you know, to read things on her own. She's gone through all the Harry Potters now, and, you know, seeing how gripped and fascinated she was by those books made me kind of see that and remember my own sort of, you know, experience reading as a kid, and how thrilled and excited I was at reading, and how liberating it is for kids, you know. And I suppose it was in the back of my mind that it would be nice to have something to share with my kids, but also nice to write something that might come to kids at an earlier age, where it would really, you know, hopefully inspire them and strike sparks from them in a way that, you know, jaded adults, it's much harder to do. So I think it's important that, you know, that there is good, interesting, tough, uncompromising fiction for kids. The stuff that I read as a kid that I was thinking of, you know, as influences for this, Rosemary Sutcliffe's historical fiction, say, was one example. These were sort of quite dark, quite adult books with a lot of honesty in them, a lot of unpleasantness, questionable decisions on the part of the characters, a lot of toughness and authenticity in the historical research, and that was the kind of feel that I was going for, not something that was, you know, soft, easy, with its teeth pulled. I wanted it to feel tough.
So, what's next? Is there going to be another book in the series? Can I ask? Is that okay?
You can ask, but, you know, you better make sure you want the answer. That's all. Do you want the answer?
Yeah, I guess
so. There will be 3. That is the plan. The second one's already edited, I'm delighted to say, and needs to be copy edited, but it's pretty much there. That book should be appearing in proof form in the next month or so. So it's a quick turnaround. This one's just come out. The proofs of the next one will be circulating soon. And then the book will be out in January, February. It's called Half the World. And it follows different point of view characters. So the idea with these 3 books was to have 3 kind of individual stories that add up to one bigger story. So the first book is the story of Yarvi. In the second one, there are 2 different point of view characters. Time moves on. The characters stay around that 16 to 18 age range. And then the third book, Half a War, should hopefully follow in July. So the whole lot will come within a year. That's the plan.
Can I ask you one more question?
All right, go on.
Okay. I heard that there I heard that there are some short stories that are going to come out about the First Law characters. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, okay. I've done a few short stories in the First Law world over the last 3 or 4 years, really. Some for special editions of the novels, some for anthologies that have been edited by George R.R. Martin, and a couple of other anthologies. And the idea is to collect all these First Law stories together into one volume, which hopefully should appear the year after the last of these younger adult books has been written. So 2016 probably we'll see that, and it'll be maybe a dozen short stories. Hopefully then the following year I'll have had enough time to kind of get a new First Law trilogy underway and up and running. So I'm hoping the first of those might appear around 2017, but exactly what form they'll take is still very much up in the air.
All right, I actually got one more. Okay, fine. If you don't...
I'm here, just do it.
Okay, so are we... what would you think about people... I know you played Dungeons & Dragons as a... what would you think about people taking in their own home campaigns, things from your worlds and your characters, and homebrewing their own kind of settings? Would that... what do you think about that? Say, did you ever do that when you were a kid? And...
I was a big role player, definitely. It was the main thing that I did between the ages of about 10 and 15, I would have thought. Spent a lot of time with the character sheets and the many-coloured, many-sided dice. I am no stranger to these things at all. I kind of got out of the habit later because, people moved away, the group split up, and you need a lot of other people and a lot of time to do those things generally. So, it was a really important formative experience for me, and I'd be delighted for other people to, find my stuff inspiring in some way. Occasionally people email me kind of saying, they've based a campaign around my stuff or something, and that's always lovely to hear. So yeah, I'm up for that, absolutely. I think any kind of creativity that people bring to something is always nice, and, inspiring someone else is in a sense the kind of ultimate compliment. Other than money. Money is the ultimate compliment, but inspiring other people is second. Please is the word you're looking for. Please.
Would it be okay if I did that in my own home campaign?
No, not you.
Fine.
Yeah. It's kids I want to inspire. I want to inspire young people with something to offer to the world.
41 and I play, yeah.
This is what I'm saying. You're a lot older than me. At 39. I'm never going to be 41. Never.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. Is there anywhere people can find you?
People can find me at Comic-Con this weekend, obviously, but also on my website, www.joeabercrombie.com, and on Twitter, at Lord Grimdark. I'm often to be found on Twitter. Yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Why do you use Lord Grimdark? Is there
That is my title. That is my title conferred upon myself. Well, people, use the term grimdark to describe a certain kind of fantasy in a disparaging way, and so I thought it might be amusing to reclaim that title for myself and, own the worst that people have to say about you.
Don't come out. No. Don't interrupt.
Get back.
Okay. Thank you.
You should thank me.